Hey everyone, this is the fifth of 5 episodes on our trip to Asia. As I publish this, we're already a few days into Thailand with about a week left. I wanted to say thank you to everyone listening. We crossed 1,000 downloads a few weeks ago and are quickly approaching 2,000 downloads. Despite a few audio editing glitches, I'm happy with how it's going so far. But hey, I'm doing the audio production on my own for the first time and learning as I go along. So I guess you'll have to deal with it as I figure this thing out. Second, I'm still finalizing plans for our third trip, but it looks like it's going to be about 7 weeks across 5 countries. However, I need to record those episodes when I'm home in 2 weeks. I couldn't do them earlier because I didn't know where I was going. So after this episode, the podcast will be on break until about the 3rd or 4th week of April. That's when I'll release the interview discussions for the next set of countries. I'll also be releasing the recap episodes for Asia. To me, the recaps with Taylor have been a ton of fun. Spoiler alert, I have a lot to share about these 6 weeks in Asia. Also, be sure to go to myhomeisspecial.com so you can see the photo galleries as I release them. I've got a bunch to release and it'll probably get to mid-April before I finish getting through all the photos. For now, I hope you enjoy the Thailand episode. Peace. So today I want to welcome Oakley to the podcast to talk a little bit about Thailand. Oakley, welcome to My Home is Special.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Now, Oakley, as I like to do, I want people to understand and know who they're listening to. So can you take a minute and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes. Hi, my name is Oakley Boren. I'm originally from Bangkok, Thailand. I now live in Seal Beach, California. I've been in the States since 1993 and came here for education and haven't really left. I work for a nonprofit in now Long Beach, California. And I work with high school students, getting them career ready and prepare for the workforce. I cosplay, I like sci-fi. My motto is I'm a creative social nerd.
As somebody who's snapped the cosplay community at Comic-Con and C2E2 here in Chicago, I can't let that slide without asking your favorite cosplays.
Did you see my idol right there behind me there? There's my Harley Quinn.
Now, Oakley, how do we know each other from your perspective?
Our friend Christine introduced us. Christine and I used to work together as our old people call it the dot-com days, the startups of the 90s. We worked together then and we've been friends since. When
I sent out my last email update while we were touring in South America, I still had not identified the person from Thailand that I would talk with. So I sort of put in the newsletter, still looking if anybody has anyone. And Christine responded and was like, do you still need somebody from Thailand? I have a friend who's from there and she might be down. I was like, yes, put me on. So you and I have officially met twice because we talked earlier this week. But thank you for making the time to do this and talking about Thailand. It's going to be awesome. I appreciate it.
I grew up being the ambassador to my country. So, this is my pleasure to talk about it.
Now, can you talk a little bit about your first trips to the U.S.? Because you came here for school, but it wasn't your university wasn't your first time coming, right?
No, high school was not the first time I was coming. So in Thailand, our school breaks are off from you guys because our seasons are different. So our summer is March and April. So I came to the States in March and April, much like many of the influential families with kids get sent off to another country to learn English, to go into an immersive program. Mm-hmm. So I came here for the immersion before I went home and decided, I like it here. I'm moving. So in the fall, the following fall, I quit school in Thailand and came to the U.S. and went to school in Orange County.
Oakley, you said you get home pretty regularly, and it sounded to me like you had a bunch of stuff that you like to do when you're there. So I want to talk about some of those things and why they're special to you. Why don't we start about your hometown and the neighborhood that you go back to?
So I grew up in Bangkok. So imagine Bangkok as New York. I'm from which side is it, east or west? That's the bougie side. I'm from that upper east side of the city. Everything's expensive. All the buildings are tall. But the fun part about Bangkok is you can have a gigantic high rise next to a family home with all the trees and just a 2-story house. And then you walk down, another 10 yards and it's all residential now, next to another big giant mall condo hotel complex.
So zoning is not really a thing over there?
It is not. It is not. Absolutely not. And it's been that way since the very beginning. My dad is Thailand's national artist with award in urban planning.
Hmm.
And he's been fighting the city since he was started the business. Like the city planning is no good. Everything that he said was going to happen happened. Traffic is horrible. There's too many people in one side, not enough people on the other side, and all of that stuff that he said, you guys, we shouldn't do this, and it's all happening right now. The city streets, it's not really blocks. Like if you were going down Sukhumvit, which is technically like the longest street in the country, it branches out into smaller streets, and each of those branches out some more. And once you get into those, it's spaghetti. It's like
Everything goes. It reminds me of when I first got to Boston after growing up visiting New York so often. I was like, wow, I guess they just let the horses go where they want and then just pave those trails a couple decades later. Got it. Roger that.
that's pretty much was Bangkok was. Bangkok was agriculture, and we were Venice of the East for all the fact that we traveled through canals.
Right.
It's canals everywhere.
Right.
So some of these roads, essentially, they're filling the canals, and now they're roads.
Right. So let me ask you, when you go back home and you visit your former house, what was that like growing up and what's it like now?
When we were growing up, Lang Suan is the area. Lang Suan used to be kind of edge going into the suburbs. We're not suburb like it's not the city center. Silom area was and kind of is city center. Now it's just like a business center, like Wall Street. Silom is like Wall Street. So, we had gas station, we have a big mall next to us. Life was pretty easy. You can run amok Lang Suan, and my house is hop and skip away from my school, Mater Dei, which is on the corner there.
Hmm.
And life was pretty quiet and easy, and that one day we blinked and now we're the center of the city. One of the highest prized properties in the entire Bangkok.
Right. Now, is your house still there and do you go back and see the house? I know when I go back to New Jersey, for some reason, I still go back and drive by the house I grew up in and it's still there, but I've never gone and knocked on the door and asked strangers if I could go in and check it out.
So the difference between America and Thailand in this sense too is that most people never leave their home. If they grew up in that house, that's the house they grew up in their entire life.
Right.
For us, it's the same. Actually, the property was there long before my family came around. It belongs to my royal side of the family. And so it used to be like a country house that my dad would visit. And eventually, by the time we have the family, dad had it rebuilt and it became a compound. My uncle, my dad's twin brother, and his family's in one. We're in the middle, and on the end is where my grandmother is. She's on the second floor, and then my dad's office is on second and third. Pretty much all of us grew up together. My three cousins, my two older brothers, and I, and my grandmother, all together in that same place.
And is the house still there?
The house is gone. The property is still ours. My dad's an architect, and my brother had taken up real estate development. So we made a decision to demo the house, turn it into a condo, 6-story, because of zoning. We do have some zoning law. We built it on the property that our house was. And it has the elements of the old house because we're one of the first buildings that was exposed red bricks. All of us get a unit as a developer. We would rent them out since I live here. So my unit currently has not been rented, but it's a fully furnished condo. So when I went home right before the pandemic in 2019, I just stay there. My brother is in the condo 2 doors down with his family.
Right.
And I just stayed the whole 2 weeks in my own condo next door. So it felt like home, but better view because I'm on 6th floor. I have to walk in and out of the same streets I walked in my whole life. It felt the same. I'm still in the same neighborhood.
How does the neighborhood feel? Does it feel the same? I mean, I imagine there's been other development in the decade plus that you've been gone. Are there other changes that make it feel different, or does it still have those core elements where you're like, yeah, this is kind of home for me? It feels the same.
It feels the same in the sense that because I visit every year and at some point every other year, so I watch it changes
Right.
as I go. So it's not like it was a big shock. As much as the law of the city talked about street vending, there's still street vendors.
Right. Right. In some ways, home always feels like home, I suppose.
As all the buildings change, all the shop changes, The restaurants that we used to eat has gone. It feels the same. Strangely, it does feel the same.
Oakley, when we talked, you mentioned the connections you still have to the people back home, and that includes sort of two groups of friends. One was your school friends, and the other was the group that you called the aunties. Why don't we start with the school friends and tell me a little bit about those? How do those relationships work, and why is that a special part of what you do when you go back home?
As mentioned, I went to modern day school in Langsuan, which is private Catholic K through 12. My dad actually was one of the last boys who attended kindergarten before they turned it into completely all girls. So it's a long history with the family because, again, the entire royal family has grew up around there too. Thai people don't really move much. And when we go to school, unlike the US, most Thai schools are K through 12, or at least 1 through 12. We don't change schools. We go to school, we go to one, and that's pretty much, for most of us, that's that. One school we go in our entire 12 years. So for me, some of my friends I had since kindergarten.
Right.
There are a few that I knew since preschool. And the fun one, Tammy, we would tell people that we were friends since we were eggs because our moms were friends. So we were friends long before we actually met in, preschool.
You literally grow up together. Like I went to a K through 8 school, and by the time you're in 8th grade, like when you think about who you are at 4 and who you are at like 13 or 14, there's a lot of growth there, and you end up getting really close to people. Is there like a core group of friends that you try and connect with when you're home?
Yeah, so I have my besties. I have three. One of them actually I went to preschool with as well. So that's the core group that I see all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. That's like my besties. And then I have another group that is my art friends, which one of those moments when you haven't seen each other in 20 years, suddenly reconnect and was like, wait, you went to art school and you love museums. And the other one, she's a DJ and voice actor, kind of, she does commercials. She loves art. This is the one that know all where all the art exhibitions are. And then another one who turned out to be a professor now at our art university.
Oh, shoot.
Once we connected, I was like, wait a minute, I like to see art. And when I get back, I have a text group called the Artsy Babes. And I would call this group and say, hey, I'm home, guys. Where's the artsy thing at? Let's go. And then we would get together, trying to get together for brunch or lunch or dinner, and then we'd go see art.
So real talk, when I get there, since I'm a photographer who likes to see art when I'm traveling, can I tap the Artsy Babes for some suggestions when I get out to Bangkok?
I would say if you're already doing the touristy things with the temples and the Grand Palace by the river, I would connect you with the professor at the art university because they do have an art center where they have exhibits year round, and it's huge. It's housed in the former palace of one of the kings. And, they kept it really nice and renovated. And if she's around, she can walk you through the exhibits. It's really neat. And right around there's a little bit of a renaissance with hip bars and restaurants that pop up around the area. Like, the hipsters of the city would know. But you wouldn't know if you were just a tourist walking down, 2 blocks. And it's down residential, all the shop houses. And shop houses are essentially like townhomes where they work downstairs and they live upstairs. Unsuspecting alleyway that you walk down and then you pop out and there's like 3 little restaurants on the river across from the Temple of Dawn, and tiny places, and have best food and like very, very trendy mixologist program, and you just sit there and watch the sunset.
Oakley, the other group that I mentioned was the aunties, and a lot of different cultures, the Black community included, has their aunties, which are your mom's friends. They're not really related, but if you step out of line, they're all of a sudden very related. Talk to me a little bit about the aunties. Who are these people?
Very much the same. Thai aunties, or you can ask any Asian friends of yours. All our aunties rarely are related. So my aunties, these are my mom's best friends. Grew up together, went to the school together. My mom also went to boarding school. So those girls are even tighter than my Mother Day friends because they actually, boarded together.
Mm-hmm.
So the BFF of the aunties is Auntie Sida, or Thai people have, we have different names. So her nickname is Na'a. For English speaking people, I'll go with Sida because that's easier. So Auntie Sida is my mom's best friend. She has two kids, and her two kids are my late oldest brother's best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all friends. We grew up together. So the aunties, when we were growing up, my house, Langsuan, was like the city center.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, we're close to Mater Dei, so her friends that had kids in Mater Deis would come over, hang out, waiting to pick up the kids, or come by after they drop off the kids. It's close to Silom, where all the businesses are, so her friends who are working would come over here for lunch, or my mom would go to lunch. So the aunties have come and gone through the house my entire life.
Right.
And at some point, they all also get the group together. Sometimes they take the kids, sometimes they don't, and go on trips. They had like monthly dinner, another monthly brunch, and mom would take me because I'm a girl. Mom would take me with her, and I actually didn't mind. I love the aunties. They're fun. They're sassy. Sometimes like, my mom had to cover my ears, like, no, you're not supposed to hear about that. So every year I go home, when my mom was still with us, I hang out with them too. Mom was like, auntie's coming to pick us up, and we're going to go do all these things. So now that they're much older, the kids take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So they provide for the drivers, they provide all of this in the van, and the next thing you know, it's like the aunties will come over and just pick me up, like send a driver to pick me up and then go do something else. And when my mom was alive, the same thing. One of the aunties showed up with the van, and we picked up 2, 3 other aunties. We went to lunch, we go to market, we went to the mall, and then we get dropped off at home. Every year when I go home, I do the same, either with my mom or without. So after she passed, now I became the analog for my mom.
Right.
Because they're all like, oh my God, we miss her so much. And you're just like her in the sense that you're like chatty and friendly. And, you know, I look exactly like my dad, nothing like my mother. But they were like, you have your mom's personality. So I'd go with them. Same thing. Where do you want to eat? What have you not eaten in the States? We'll take you there. And I will call, Auntie Sida will call 2, 3 other aunties. Or if she's going to like the brunch that they do monthly, like when I went home during Halloween, they had the Halloween lunch. So she just picked me up and I went to lunch with all these aunties I haven't seen. Some of them I haven't seen in 30 years since I left.
Right. One of the things a lot of the guests have talked about on the podcast is the importance of spending time with people that they love, even if there's no planned agenda. And a lot of times it seems like it revolved around food. Are there some restaurants or spots that you'd always try and hit if you could with the aunties when you're home?
There's no particular spot. It's usually more about what food. Because year over year, sometimes the restaurant you grew up with, it's no longer there. For example, there's one place in English. It's Great Shanghai. To us, it's called New Great Shanghai because there used to be a Great Shanghai before that. That place was still the same 40 years on inside, but it's now in the part of the city where you have to go park in the mall and then walk yourself out to it because the mall, like the neighborhood grew up around it. So that place sometimes, once in a while, my dad would want to go because that's my late brother's favorite restaurant. We all meet there. So this past trip, the auntie goes, wait, you know what? There's a new location. It's now called the Grand Shanghai. And they were just there recently and they wanted to take me because, again, my late brother, you know, that's his favorite place. So I'm like, okay, let's go. I was like, wait, is this a relocation of the Great Shanghai? And they're like, no, the Great Shanghai is still there. This is the chef who used to work there for like 20 years, finally left and opened this one. So the food is exactly the same. It's just in a different location.
And how was it?
And exactly the same. The drunken chicken tastes the same. The Peking duck tastes the same. Auntie Sida got my dad there. And another auntie whose kid was my brother's friend. Mm-hmm. And another auntie whose kid is a friend of both my brother and I. And her daughter now goes to UCI and I take care of her. So it's cool. Like generational of mom's friends whose kids are friends. And that's the family. That's my extended family.
Yeah, and it's neat to have those spots where you can go enjoy each other's company or remember some of the family members that may not be able to join you.
It doesn't have to be restaurants. It's just food just brings so many memories. Mm-hmm. And in a city where you can eat any kind of food at any time, sometimes the memory is just the food itself and not tied to a place.
So, Oakley, as we start to wrap up here, I did want to ask you a little bit more about the country because Bangkok is not the only city in Thailand. And I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about the things you do when you go back. When we talked earlier, you mentioned that your husband's not a huge fan of the city. So when you get back with him, you try and get outside the city. And I thought maybe you could share a little bit about some of the special places and some of the reasons that you go to those places outside the city when you're home.
So my husband and I have been married 22 years. And he's been back with me 3 times. And he grew up, in Lakewood, California, when it's just the suburb. So he hates the city. I can get maybe 2, 3 days out of him before, and it's getting worse each time we go because when I went the first time, we still had our house. The city's already started coming up around us, but it still feels slightly townish.
Mm-hmm.
So the first trip we went to Phuket for our honeymoon, which is the island down south.
Mm-hmm.
That one, it's because he wants to see Phuket. He wants to see the beach. We want to do things just the two of us as our honeymoon goes. And then when we got to town, Auntie Sida has properties all over Thailand. So this is Auntie Sida, my mom's best friend. She has a house in Chiang Mai. And so we went to her house in Chiang Mai, which is in the little town called Chiang Dao. It's the mountain town, but we also made a mistake of mentioning that Brandon likes temples. And oh boy, did we see temples while we're in Chiang Mai. We went to see the elephants, and then, again, one of those things that you just have to do. And like on the way between the house and the elephant, it's like, oh, that temple is great. We're going to stop there. Oh, that temple is great. We're going to stop there. And it was a temple tour. He's like, I will never mention that to anybody again.
Does he have his favorite spots that he looks forward to going back to, you think?
One of Auntie Sida's properties is to the northeast of Bangkok in the national parks called Khao Yai. Khao Yai also is a bit of up and coming. It's kind of Coachella for us. There's like a venue where all the concert and festivals happening now in Khao Yai. It's starting to get developed, but you still have a sense of wilderness out there. So Auntie Sida has a property, and we visited that property after my mom had passed. Brandon loved it because her property, you can see a mountain on one side and the forest on the other side. It's just at the edge of the national park. So wildlife is a thing. And there's a field behind it because it's a huge property to just, have the house on end. She used to have sunflowers, like a little tiny mini sunflower farms at the back of the property. So the year that Brandon and I went, the sunflowers were out and it was all these gorgeous flowers in the back. And then the elephants came down from the mountain and eat them. So,
So I'm taking away that there's a lot to see and do in Bangkok, both the trendy stuff, the hip stuff, but I should make sure that I see, the city center, try a bunch of the different types of food, but I have to make sure that I get outside the city and not just go to Chiang Mai, but try and get into the countryside for a day or so. What is the thing that you hope I take away from my trip to Thailand? We're going to be there. I think it's either the longest or the second longest stop we're making, almost 2 full weeks. What do you hope that I take away and that I bring back with me from my experience there?
the food, absolutely the food. Thai food you get in the States is nothing like Thai food you get in Thailand. That's definitely is the thing. All our snacks are crazy. They're good. They're wild. It sounds weird, but our potato chips, our Lay's, comes in the flavors you never hear about in the States. We have a whole wall in the grocery store when it's like 12 different flavors of Lay's. We have very creative snacks. Our people, kind, warm, could be a little passive aggressive because of our culture. Could be a little nosy with our culture, but they all mean well. It's all well meant. The passive aggressive mainly because we're our culture of the ask. We don't want to assume. We don't want to impose.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, by doing so, you're being indirect, and sometimes it's really frustrating for a Westerner. Brandon was like, "Can you just ask what they want?" I'm like, "I'll work on it." But customer service is ridiculous in Thailand. So good, especially when you're a tourist. That the warmth of our people, the deliciousness of our food, the beautiful yet chaotic nature of Bangkok. It's such a city of conflicts. Like I said, as you ride the BTS SkyTrain through the city, you would go through like all this high rises, bougie, Louis Vuitton, all of this brand name, and then in the quick as you can blink, there's like a temple in the middle of the
Right.
city
Right.
between these two gigantic malls.
I'm looking forward to taking advantage of that. I've been to Bangkok once before for a couple days, and I walked around by myself with my camera, and the energy and the vibrance of the city and the smells of the city and the scenes of the city and the colors of the city were just absolutely outstanding. So I'm looking forward to taking my time to experience the city and check out some of the places that you talked about. So thank you for making the time today to have this conversation. When I get back in April, I'll probably try and check back in with you and let you know how it was.
Of course, my pleasure. I hope you enjoy your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of My Home is Special. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get future episodes automatically. Go to myhomeisspecial.com for the occasional email update too. That's where links to photo galleries and a few other surprises will live. Be sure to follow KBev Photo on Instagram for behind-the-scenes footage during our journey, and it'll be in the stories. If you just want the photos, go to kbevphoto.com. There's a lot else on there to explore. For now, this is Keith, aka KBev, signing off. Peace.